And then I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with all of you. Okay, so thanks again for joining us tonight, everybody, for our Rutgers HR Alumni panel focusing on healthcare and pharmaceuticals. The way that the panel will work tonight, the first half, we will be asking our panelists a series of questions focusing on their experiences and any advice and suggestions they have for current students. And then in the second half, we'll open it up to questions from all of you. So anytime throughout the panel, if any of you has a question, feel free to type it into the chat box and we will get to it in the second half of the panel later on. Before I kick it off to our panelists to introduce themselves, I'd like to first give an opportunity to some of my colleagues who are on the call tonight to introduce themselves. I guess we can start with Jeffrey, if you're there, if you want to introduce yourself very quickly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Mercado. I'm a junior and I major in human resource management with a double minor in business administration and labor relations. And I'm super excited to see how this panel will go.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. Like Jeffrey, I'm also a peer ambassador. I just finished my undergraduate degree at Rutgers in communications and HR management, and I'm currently in the HR master's program at Rutgers.
Thanks, Jessica. Ildi.
Hi everyone, my name is Ildi and I am the big reaction button person, as you can see next to my name. And I'm the Assistant Director of Student Services for Careers. And I'm so excited, at the School of Communication and Information, sorry about that. And I'm very excited to be here and I'm so excited to see a lot of you alumni coming back and helping us understand your career path, and excited to hear your experiences. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Ildi. And finally, we have Len.
Hey there, thank you. Hi, everyone. So I run the Career Services Office for the School of Management and Labor Relations. I also teach a career management class, and some of these panelists look very familiar to me. And also used to work with Ildi, so enjoy the session tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. So now I want to kick it off to our panelists. So if each of you could just briefly introduce yourselves to the students tonight. Hajer, if you want to start first.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Hajer. I graduated from the School of Management and Labor Relations in 2019 with my master's in labor and employment relations. I have spent most of my career in healthcare in different capacities. Currently, I am a talent acquisition partner at St. Peter's University Hospital in New Brunswick. Maybe you've seen it around College Ave. And I'm happy to share my journey with you tonight.
Thank you. Claude, how about you?
Hey, everybody. My name is Claude Richardson. That's also my dad's name, so I also go by CJ, Claude Jr. I went to Rutgers and I graduated in 2015. And currently I work for Gilead Sciences and I'm a talent acquisition strategic sourcing partner. And so I'm excited to share with you how I got there and any insights that will help you guys.
Thank you. And Dominique.
Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. I graduated from Rutgers in 2017 with my degree and my bachelor's in HRM. I, after that, went through a rotational program at GSK, so really excited to share my experience with you about that. And I'm currently an HR business partner within our R&D business unit.
Thank you, Dominique. So sort of piggybacking off of your introductions, I'd like to go into our first question. Can each of you share about your experience going from being a student within SMLR to your current position within HR? And anyone can start us off.
I can start. So I started my HR career in the first year of my master's program. I graduated with my bachelor's degree. I was a double major. I majored in labor studies and employment relations, as well as social work. And my initial goal was I was going to be a social worker. I was going to change the world. And I had a lot of ambition. And I started to do, like, I worked in the field, and I was noticing a lot of the trends in at least social work was the burnout, the really toxic work environment. And I was like, hey, I studied this in school. Is there a way that I can figure this out? So I decided to pursue my master's, and in my master's degree, I was able to apply for some positions, and I got my first position as a recruiter in behavioral health. I was working for Hackensack Meridian Health, and I was there for 8 years, and I actually transitioned from there into a biopharma position that I spent maybe like 3 months in, and I realized how much I loved healthcare, so then I actually transitioned back into healthcare. But it was through those courses that I was able to say, hey, I want to be the person who is the gatekeeper and kind of helps bring in the happy, positive people into the work environment. So that was what drew me in that direction.
I'll go. So upon graduation, and after having taken a lot of classes and doing some internships and recruiting and such, I knew that I wanted to do HR. I kind of fell into it. One of my friends was majoring in it, and I decided to take the intro class. And I was like, oh, I really like this. I'm really interested in connecting people with their next career. But I wasn't really sure I wanted to go into recruiting right after school. So I was looking for rotational programs. GSK specifically had a rotational program called our Future Leaders Program for undergrad students coming right out of school. So I went to that program. It was 3 years. Now it's only 2 years. So I did 5 different rotations within that program, ranging from kind of a generalist role in R&D, going to sales and doing some compensation work, then going into recruitment marketing and working on our employer brand and telling employee stories. And then I was super interested in HR and tech and seeing what we're doing from a technology perspective as it relates to employee experience within HR. And then I ended that rotational program doing sales kind of HR work and looking at the culture within our sales organization. So for me, doing that program really allowed me to see what are areas I like in HR, what are areas where I'm not too keen, and kind of where I wanted to end up. So after doing that program, I offboarded about 7 months ago into my permanent role as an HR business partner because I decided that after doing all of those roles that I really wanted to do the generalist role. I really wanted to understand a little bit more about the foundational HR pieces, like when you think about talent and you think about succession planning and you think about reward and retention and all of those things that I'm currently doing in my role, but I still have all those things in my toolkit. So for me, it was more of a, there's so many different parts of HR and I wanted to get a lot of different exposure. And so kind of navigating this rotational program for the past 3 years, I feel like I've gotten a lot of different exposure. And in this role, I feel like I'm still getting that exposure just in a different way.
Excellent. When I was a senior, I had my second internship with Johnson & Johnson, and I was a talent acquisition co-op. And so I was pretty fortunate in the fact that they created a position for me, and I stepped into that when I graduated from Rutgers. I was a junior sourcing specialist, and I made it about a year until they had a big shakeup. And at that time, Amazon approached me, so I took a chance and ended up actually being a little bit too hasty. I got laid off in 3 months from Amazon, and I was looking for a job for a little while in 2016. In 2017, I ended up moving down to Florida. Right now, I live in Orlando, and I started working in a hospital system. And it was a really cool job because I got some foundational experience. We're doing offers in recruitment on paper. And so I helped bring them into the 21st century by doing that with systems and implementing and testing. And that really prepared me for the job that I have now at Gilead Sciences. And I'm what's called a specialist, meaning that I'm really focused in on how to do recruiting strategically and I create new strategies in order to do it faster, better, cheaper, what have you. And so I've been working in recruiting for about 5 years now, and I work remotely. And so I think that I'll be here for a little while in the same type of job. It's very broad, as you could tell. And so that's a little bit about how I started out, and I'm still in recruiting.
Thanks everyone for sharing your experience. Moving on to the next question.
So I'll kick off this next question. So how did you figure out what HR function and or industry you wanted to work in? Sort of, the path that you took and what exactly led you to, HR?
I can piggyback off of my last experience. The Gilead Sciences is in biotechnology and pharmaceuticals, and that industry is scientific. It's really fascinating to me to work at a company where they have people who research and create new drugs. They create new ways to study and attack diseases. And right now, we have a treatment that's being worked on and actually is approved and rolled out to treat coronavirus. And so that kind of cutting edge science really speaks to me. I think it's fascinating. I think it's a challenge. And so this sort of industry, it drew me in, to be honest. And I think that I knew that I wanted to stay here because I ended up trying out different industries. Some of them are pretty volatile. Some of them are pretty crazy. Some of them are kind of dramatic to me. And so I think that the one that I'm in now, biopharmaceuticals and pharma, is a good fit for me. I'm a nerd, and so it's a good way to geek out on the kind of work that you do, so it's interesting to you, and still make a living for yourself. And so that's how I figured out that I wanted to be in this industry.
Yeah, so when I first started looking, I wasn't looking for an industry. I was looking for a rotational program. And it just so happened that that was in the pharmaceutical industry, but my dad has worked in pharma for over 25 years. So from his experiences, I was like, okay, I think pharma's a good place to start. And I had internships in manufacturing and insurance and consumer. And so I had been a little bit around, and pharma was something new to me. And I think I absolutely made the right decision, especially with what's going on right now. And really being at the cutting edge and being at the force of trying to develop drugs for this pandemic that we're currently in. I would say what I loved about doing this rotational program at GSK is that I could do it in so many different areas. So the fact that I was able to get some experience within R&D, which is where I am now, go into sales, go into marketing, go into tech. Not all companies have that ability to be able to go in all those different areas in one company and learn as much as I did. So for me, what I loved about big pharma is all the opportunity that's there. I mean, every rotation that I was in, it was a new experience. It was a new manager. It was a new organizational structure, which of course was challenging, but for someone like me that's super excited to learn and grow, it was an awesome opportunity. And so I could see myself staying in pharma for quite a bit. I think I do want to try some other industries as well, but I do like pharma because there's a lot of growth, a lot of opportunities, and I think it's constantly changing. I think COVID-19, typically pharma is known as, being very big, being very slow to change, but I think COVID changed all of that, and now people are forced to kind of really start developing drugs. And I know that GSK has quite a few things on the horizon, so I'm excited to be a part of a company that is making that kind of change.
So I started my career in healthcare, and I thought I had a feeling that I loved it and it was my passion, but I wanted to explore other things. So I did take some time and work in a biopharma organization, and that kind of solidified my real passion for healthcare. I love being able to support the people, the frontline workers who are, doing the hard work right now during COVID-19, being able to staff them appropriately, finding the top talent across the country. We've been recruiting people from all over the country, not just in New Jersey, just because the need is so great. And that's just being able to support that kind of work through my work is what I found really, truly wonderful about being in healthcare. And that's why I came back.
Thanks, everyone. So it sounds like for each of you, you've been able to find a connection between your own personal interests and values, right, and what's important to you with the job that you're doing, which I think is really great to hear, and something that I think a lot of our students strive for as well. So the next question, so what are the main challenges that you face in your current role?
I don't want to make this a gripe session. However, it's hard to work on a team when people leave all the time, for whatever reason. And that happens on my team. We have high turnover, and I think that people get burned out and can't keep up sometimes. So I think that is one of the hardest parts about my job. And then the double-edged sword is working virtually. On one hand, it makes a lot of things easier. You can condense your schedule and do several things at one time, which is a good thing to me. But on the other hand, especially when people were, before the pandemic working in person, it's hard to make those connections, and you don't want anybody to forget about you. And so you have to have a presence. And so that can be tough sometimes. So the two challenges for me are working virtually sometimes and team turnover.
Yeah, so I would say the main challenges in my role right now are working in this big organization, supporting a lot of different leaders. It's prioritizing. Constantly, I am getting pulled into meetings, having people pinging me when I'm talking with other people, and you have people saying, "I need things yesterday, not today. I needed it 5 days ago," and they didn't even ask for it. So, I think that some of the challenges are being able to prioritize and saying, right, this is my role. What are the things that I need to do? When do I need to do them? And, who is it for, right? And what's the reason? So I think that's the one thing that coming into this role, I learned a bit in the rotational program, but it's a lot different when you are responsible for 3 or 4 different, leadership teams you are their number one, right? So whenever there's an ERC issue, if they need something done, if you need to coach a leader on something, you are that person. And so learning how to kind of navigate that landscape is something that I'm still learning, and it's still very challenging, but that's also why I took this role, so that I could be challenged in that space. I think the other thing is learning to set boundaries. I think that's something that can be quite a bit difficult, especially and intimidating when you are dealing with people senior in the organization, because, sometimes they're used to people saying yes to them all the time. And I think being in this role, one of the things I've had to learn is the importance of saying, you know what, let's take a step back, right? Let's pause and really look at why you're asking for this information. Is this really needed? What is the bigger picture? And I think that's something that in any role that you have, those two things, prioritizing and setting boundaries, is going to be extremely important, because you're going to have people that just kind of see you as just do what I want. But I think part of being a very strategic HR business partner is looking at it from a strategic lens and saying, I understand this is what you want, but sometimes it's not what they need to fulfill exactly what they're looking for. So to me, those are the two challenges that I'm probably facing the most right now.
I would definitely agree with everything that you just said. Learning to say no, and like you said, setting boundaries. Sometimes with the senior leadership, they are constantly being told yes. They're never really met with a whole lot of resistance. And so sometimes they'll ask you to do things that may not necessarily be, following policy or following the procedure. And you need to be able to be comfortable in your role and in your own, knowledge of labor law and all of the employment discrimination law to be able to say, hey, this is not right. And we're not going to do it that way. This is the way we're going to do it. So really learning to be confident in that. It's an ongoing struggle, especially being a young professional. Sometimes it's hard for them to take you seriously because they're like, I have kids your age. And so sometimes that can be challenging for them too. So just being confident in your role and your ability to set those boundaries is super, super important.
I think that was very eye-opening, everyone. Thank you for sharing. I feel like everyone thinks of everything going on with COVID-19 that, you guys in a sense are heroes, for everything that's going on. But there are those challenges that you guys have to face that, no one really asks you, how are you actually doing, being in charge of not only yourself, but in charge of other people. So that's definitely a huge struggle. So thank you for sharing. Next question. What are your favorite parts about your job? We're going to switch over to the mood now.
I'll go. I've been waiting for this question. I love my job, and what makes it so great is the people. And I think even when I ask people this now, they're always like, I love it because the people are amazing. And that is one thing that when you are looking for roles, you should be. It should be a two-way street, right? Just as you're interviewing the company, you should be interviewing them. My team makes things so much easier. I can go to my coworkers and just say, hey, I have a question on this, or hey, I'm sorry, I have 3 meetings at the same time. Can you cover for me in this one? I think establishing that network and that relationship and that trust with your coworkers is incredibly important and has made my life incredibly easy. In that way, we have coffee chats on Fridays where we don't talk about anything at work. We just had a team meeting and we do meditation at the beginning of each meeting. And last week we did the cha-cha slide. So fun things like that, even though we're virtual and I have not met half my team because I started this role during the pandemic, I feel closer to them than, maybe I would have if I was in person, because I think we're seeing, everyone at home. You're hearing their kids, you're hearing their pets, you're seeing life happening as it's happening. And so I think for me, working with my team has just made this whole experience amazing and truly unforgettable.
My favorite thing about my job is being able to get on the phone and make that offer and get excited with the candidate who you walk through the whole experience. I love being able to take somebody to that next step of their career. I love being able to facilitate that for them. I love seeing their resume and noticing skills that they may not have seen that align with another job. I love recruiting, and I agree. Like, my team is awesome. I always feel super supported by them. And like the other panelist was saying, it's so important for you to also be interviewing the company that you're going to be working at. So they're interviewing you, but you also need to interview them and realize that this is a two-way street. You are in control here. And I have had experiences where I walked out of an interview and withdrew my candidacy because I wasn't comfortable with the way things were being handled. I had a couple of interviews during the pandemic, and there were some situations where I felt uncomfortable. And so it's definitely important to get on a good team and make sure you're comfortable with them. So I absolutely love my team to death. I feel like I can rely on them for anything. So yeah, that's what I love about my job.
Nice. Like I said earlier, I like working virtually because it gives you a lot of flexibility. I also like working with people who are intelligent, honestly. It's really interesting to speak with them and learn things from them that you might not have ever thought of or heard about, And then lastly, we I really like in my job that we make a difference in medicine and the state of the world. Sometimes Gilead was in the stock market a few months ago, and it was carrying carrying the stock market on its back, and so that was interesting to see. And then lastly, I also work in inclusion and diversity. And so if you ever watch SpongeBob, there's one episode where he is talking about dismantling the oppressive establishment board by board. And I embody that. That is me. Big pharma gets a bad rep sometimes, but if you can create and leave spaces for people who are not represented as often, more often, then you can make a difference. You'll eventually see a change. And just like some of the other panelists said, recruiting is exciting because you see your work walk around. You fill a position and then that person might walk by you or send you an email or start doing things. And when they ask, how did they get there? They'll say, my recruiter is this person. And so all of those make me, it gives me intrinsic value so that my job is not just, gotta wake up and type all day. It's like I'm actually doing something that gives me life.
Thanks, everyone. I think it's so helpful to hear from all of you, both the challenges, but also the things that keep you motivated and keep you working in your role. And I think it's good to have perspective on both of those sides of the coin. So if each of you goes in a time machine, you're heading back in time to your time at Rutgers, of the classes that you took, which ones did you find most useful in preparing you for your current career?
Employment law.
And how so?
Oh yeah, seriously.
Employment law and employment discrimination law. Especially in recruiting, I feel like a lot of the times the people who are on the hiring teams aren't necessarily fully aware of what's allowed and what isn't allowed. In the hiring process, in the interview process, knowing what questions are like off limits. I've had to coach leaders sometimes in that area. So definitely being fully aware of all of the employment law. Pay attention in that class. Take that class if you haven't taken it yet.
Yep, employment law is so relevant because HR goes hand in hand with compliance. This is serious. Len Garrison's class was very helpful. He did not pay me to say that. Everybody needs a resume. Career services is something that goes beyond school. And so it was helpful to take his class as well. And then honestly, global HR, I took with Mr. Ralph Rodriguez. And as a student, sometimes I didn't really grasp what he was talking about. And you see it later on. That's the crazy part. And so Gilead Sciences is multinational, which means that we have operations here in the United States and also in many different countries around the world. And so if we create a drug that we want to sell into hospitals here in the United States, it has to go through the FDA and they have to approve it. Canada has their own version of the FDA, Japan, Europe, all the countries in Europe, and it goes on and on. And so that's really the biggest nugget I got out of global HR. And so those 3 classes really prepared me for my career.
Yeah, so I'll tag along. I would say employment law, absolutely. Yes, career management with Len was great. Absolutely recommend taking that class. But also in the School of Information and Communication, there's a class called Virtual Team Dynamics that I took as an undergrad. Little did I know that that would become my life, working virtually with my team. But I think looking back, that class was extremely helpful in helping to understand some of those team dynamics when you're virtual, because it's different, right? It's different interacting with your teammates and leaders and people virtually, and some of the things that you should keep in mind. The other one was public speaking. I would absolutely take that course. I constantly am giving presentations, making presentations, have to share my thoughts, and that's something that I do on a daily basis. And being confident, being able to showcase that, because I'm telling you, leaders can sense when you are not. is incredibly important, and that's something that you'll build as you go and you get more experience in your career. But that confidence in being able to walk into a room and know what you're talking about and being able to answer questions is incredibly important and really useful. But one of the other things that I want to mention is, besides courses, when I look back on my undergraduate experience, what really, really helped me was those soft skills. And a lot of those soft skills I actually learned from being involved. I was quite involved at Rutgers. I was a Douglas woman as well. And when I look back at all the skills that I learned, a lot of it was having in HR, we have difficult conversations. I have difficult conversations multiple times a week. And a lot of that, I had to deal with when I was present and I was doing things at Rutgers. And so I would recommend absolutely getting involved. Some of those networking, communication, a lot of those things that you can build by just getting involved and speaking with your professors and offering to, be the lead on your group project, things like that. I know that sometimes they're annoying when you're in school, but they will absolutely help you in the real world. And those are skills that you can always learn and gain from.
Thanks, everyone. Jeffrey, if it's okay, I'm going to skip forward to 2 final questions because I want to make sure we give our students in the audience a chance to ask theirs. So as the next question, I'd like to go to this one.
So as HR professionals, what do you look when you're hiring for new employees to join your team or your organization?
I can kick that one off. Gilead Sciences' whole slogan, like the catchphrase, if you will, is creating possible, because we're trying to cure diseases that haven't been cured before. They're rewriting medical textbooks. And we do that in a lot of different ways, including in HR. And so we're looking for people who have foresight. We're looking for people who are leaders, and we're looking for people who understand the business. They call that business acumen. So if you understand, that we have to do something financial and understand the moves behind that. If you work in HR and you're going to ask for money to implement a program, how's that going to look on the taxes? How's that going to look on the revenue, right? What kind of ask are you really, you have to understand the whole perspective, not just the HR perspective. And so that kind of rounded individual is what we look for in HR.
At GSK, so our culture is extremely collaborative. And so we look for people that really embody our values and our expectations. So our values are transparency, respect for people, integrity, and patient focused. Our expectations are courage, accountability, development, and teamwork. And we really, really look for people that embody those, because that is embedded in our DNA as a company, right? And especially if we're going to continue to be successful and productive, we want our employees to embody those same things that we want to project and make sure that it's in alignment with our reputation. I would say in terms of HR professionals, GSK is a huge, highly matrix organization. So someone that is ready to jump in, make relationships, take initiative, someone that knows how to kind of navigate that is incredibly important, or someone that wants to learn, because oftentimes when you think you'll have the answer, there will be 3 different people who you ask the same question to, and they'll give you 3 different answers, and you have to find that one version of the truth. So that is incredibly important. I would say people that understand the importance of analytics. So that's one thing that, as our company evolves, HR is becoming less of a support function and more of a business partnering function, right? So we are partnering with the business. And the one thing that HR I see is becoming, as I've even been in this role, is looking at data and people analytics and bringing that in. So looking at, can you take reports, right? Can you take talent reports and reward reports and say, where are the gaps that we see? And can you bring that to life and really help the organization move forward? So people that are innovative, forward thinking, but people that also realize that being in a matrix organization like GSK, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of bureaucracy, and you need to kind of learn how to navigate that.
At St. Peter's, we are looking for employees and team members who are dedicated, compassionate, very passionate about their work, definitely patient focused. We want St. Peter's to be your first choice of, coming to have a baby, coming to have your blood drawn, coming to have any, outpatient work done. We want our hospital to stand out. We have a wonderful reputation. Everyone who has ever been through our lab has said it's the best place they've ever been. It's the only place they ever want to have their blood drawn. So it's definitely something that we look for in our team members because they're the ones who make the experience for our patients, and patient service and patient excellence is one of our top priorities.
Thanks, everyone. So again, hopping in that time machine, you're heading back to your old college self. What would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give yourself back then?
I hope it's okay if I give a couple, but I'll make them quick. I would say the first thing is go to career fairs, seek out career services. I remember when I was a first year, my mom made me go to the career fair. And I remember I had my high school resume and I was like, I don't think I'm looking for an internship. I'm in my first semester. I don't even know what I went to do. But what I learned from that is I built confidence. So when I was a sophomore, I was a junior, I was a senior, and I was looking for internships and full-time jobs, I knew what I was doing. I went to those career fairs with confidence. I didn't have any qualms because I had started early, and I made sure that I used the network that I had at Rutgers to make sure that I was as successful as I could be. The second thing is ask questions, be inquisitive, seek out people to help you. One of the things I did when I was at Rutgers and I was considering HR as a major, but also as a career, is I went on LinkedIn and I would say, okay, I want to learn more about, let's say, compensation. I'm going to look for a compensation professional. I want to learn more about talent acquisition. I'm going to go search out one. People are so willing to talk about themselves if you just reach out and say, hey, I'm a student. I still get those requests and I try to accommodate as many as I can because I want to give back. And I know that that's how I got to where I am. And so you just never know what kind of connections that you can make by just reaching out to people. I would say the third thing is don't just rely on your coursework, go out, get involved, find your passion projects. I think that's the one thing, because what I love about my job is that I do like what I do, but also I know that my job is not my whole life. And so one of the things that I think always keeps me going is having those things on the side that I also enjoy doing.
I would tell myself probably, start going to career services earlier. I didn't start going to career fairs until I got into graduate school. So go to the career fairs, even if you're not looking for a job. Go see what's out there, explore your options, make sure that you're confident, get your 10-minute pitch or your 10-second pitch down or your 30-second pitch down. Make sure you know what your strengths are. And just so that when it is time, you are prepared and you're ready.
I would tell myself two things. The first one is to learn Microsoft Excel, period. The second one is that in between 60 and 85% of all jobs are filled by networking, not applications. And so I would tell my past self to start networking. Just like some of the other panelists said, go to the career events, connect with people on LinkedIn and reach out to them, because your network is very, very powerful and it can help you get the job when it's time. And so those two things is what I would tell myself back then.
Thanks so much. And it's so great to hear each of you talk about the career events, because it's a great segue to plug our virtual career fair, which is actually tomorrow. So you heard it from our panelists, attend the fair tomorrow. It's helpful, it's useful. Okay, and with that, we have about 15 minutes left, so I'd love to open it up to student questions from the chat. So Ildi and Jessica, if there are any questions you wanna share from the chat box, that'd be great.
So far there aren't any, but I think we're opening up the floor. So,
Okay. Well, can I start with a question? You don't all have to,
Absolutely.
you don't have to all answer it, but I'd be very interested because I know there are several students on here who have like a technical background, and you guys are in companies that I know hire technical people. What's that like from a recruiting standpoint? You know, what are you looking for? Obviously, besides the obvious, like, can they do the technical work, but what else?
I could talk a little bit about that. When I worked at a hospital, I was the data analyst for recruiting. And so what that means is that if somebody comes to the recruiting department and wants to know how many people were hired in a certain amount of time for this department, for this hospital, for example, what type of position, it goes on and on and on. All of that comes from a system. You know, usually that's called a system of record. And some of those data points are required to be collected. And so it's different from other types of analysis because you are analyzing people data as opposed to finance, who's analyzing financial data and money, for example. And so the ability to manage the data and the ability to speak to it are ways that you can get involved in technical data analytic operational recruiting work.
So we have a question in the chat for Dominique. Can you give some examples of your passion projects you're working on the side?
Love it. I'm on mute again. So one of us I actually just started working on was a marketing project. So I'm really interested on the side in marketing, branding, and that's why I did my rotation in recruitment marketing. And so I'm helping one of my mentors that I reconnected with kind of do a whole branding communications project around Instagram. So around the promotion of businesses of people of color, especially within the pandemic. And so I'm interviewing business leaders, understanding what they did, why they do it, and then really just doing like content calendars and grabbing data analytics, because that was one of my things in my development area. So that's something that I'm working on quite a bit now, especially with Black History Month this month.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Claude, you mentioned Excel skills. So there's a question in the chat. How do you suggest someone brush up on their Excel and analytical skills?
There's levels to this. And I would say that if you were a beginner, there are certain things that you should know when it comes to Excel. You should know how to create a table. It's pretty basic. You should be able to put that table into PowerPoint. And when it comes to analyzing data, I would say that second step is using pivot tables. So once you've created your table, you can put a lot of information in there, right? It goes from column A all the way to Z, and then it goes AA, and then it keeps going all the way down. And it goes down thousands of lines sometimes. And so pivot tables are a great way to summarize what all that data even means, what's it saying to you. And then the second part is YouTube University is a great way to learn almost anything, especially data analytics. So I think those are great ways to brush up on your skills.
Have any of you used LinkedIn Learning at all to either learn new skills or to supplement your skill set?
I have. I've taken a few courses on LinkedIn Learning. It's very helpful. Yeah. So as a student, it's free. So that's great because you get a whole bunch of classes that go from things related to your major or things that, you know, how to upload something on YouTube. So it's very helpful. Personally, I was very bored over the pandemic when we were locked at home. So I actually took a digital marketing class on there, and it just was very insightful. It was very much informative. I'm going to start taking an Excel class because I've been pushing it off, and I feel like it's time to do it. I'm a junior now. It's very much, time to jump into it, but they do offer that. And what's also great about those is that you can get a certificate at the end and it goes on your LinkedIn account. So employers and, your connections can see that one, you know how to use Excel, and two, it is backed up because you have a certificate. So highly recommendable. And you just type in LinkedIn Learning and sign in through your Rutgers account. So
thanks, Jeffrey. There's a question in the chat. Do you apply for jobs that you aren't qualified for? And I kind of want to add on to this one. So I know there are some questions around the percentage of requirements someone should meet before they decide to apply for a job. So any thoughts or opinions around that question?
So I'll go, and this is what I will say and what I told one of my mentees the other week. Do not disqualify yourself before other people disqualify you. Because I think, and that's something that I know we've seen with women, and and they'll say, oh, I don't have all the qualifications. You don't know what they're looking for. And what I always say to people is people hire people that they like. Okay, you can learn Excel, you can learn data, things like that, but your personality, what comes through, that's something that you can't take a class on that. So I would not focus so much. Now granted, don't go apply for like a VP position in entry level, but absolutely do not disqualify yourself because you don't know what they're looking for. You could be the perfect candidate and you just disqualified yourself because you didn't think you were confident. So fake it till you make it, apply. And then after that, you can always learn those skills. And one of the things that I always ask in interviews is, if I were to start this job tomorrow, what would I do next? So that when I get the job, I'm already 2 steps ahead and I don't have to go and ask my manager that question.
You want to go next, Hajer?
Yeah, we have a lot of questions coming in, so we might have to just go one question, one person sort of thing at this point. But there are a few, like Crystal is asking, are there any other technical skills that are required?
I can't speak to like HR positions. I don't really hire HR professionals. Our department is like a lean, strong machine. So we don't have I don't have a terrible amount of experience hiring HR professionals. But definitely, I think communication will take you everywhere. So being personable, being able to sell yourself and your strengths. So know what your strengths are and be able to, even if you don't have any relevant work experience to what you're applying for, what you've done in the past, what you've done in school, find your strengths and frame them into the position that you want to be in.
That's good advice. I'll just quickly say that in terms of technical skills, you need to be able to communicate using technology. So that means using PowerPoints, that means writing up an executive summary or a quick email, and it's up to you to decide what's needed and how long it should be. And so I think that's a technical skill for your communication.
Thank you. Great advice. Brooke is asking, do you have any tips for students looking for experience in hospital settings with COVID, just having a difficult time finding organizations that are accepting interns and shadowers?
I know that a lot of healthcare systems right now, ours included, have a little bit of a freeze on like non-essential. And unfortunately, HR is really considered non-essential, even though we are very essential, especially during COVID for our employees. But things are starting to reopen. So keep your eye out for internships, shadowing opportunities, reach out to people on LinkedIn. So if you go to like the company page for the hospital that you're interested in, it'll show you who's in HR and you can reach out to the manager. It happens to me all the time. People ask for opportunities, and even if it's a virtual, like we just brought on an intern virtually. So there are virtual opportunities out there that you can keep an eye out for.
There's a question in the chat about the career fair. So when you do have a one-on-one discussion at a career fair with an employer, what are the best questions that you can ask them?
When I go to a career fair, I have a lot of questions. if I'm going to work for your company, I would really like to know, what's it like to work there? What's the food like? Do you have a cafeteria? Does everybody work virtually? You know, I think that you could really almost ask anything that interests you, but I think the most important thing is to make a lasting impression on the person you speak to, because they're probably going to speak to 200 people that day. And then two, get information that will help you, right? Ask about the job, the what do you call it, the assessment process, the recruitment process. Ask about what it takes to get in there, and ask about new opportunities coming up. And that's what I talk about when I go to career fairs.
My favorite question to ask is what they love about their job, because if somebody has a hard time telling you what they love about their job, it's probably not a place you want to be. So I've asked that question before and I've stumped people. They are taken off guard by it sometimes. So really just ask, what's your favorite part about your job? Why would I want to work here? Because again, you're interviewing them. Convince me, why is this a great place to work?
Yep, I would agree with that. One of the things I always do is I do research, and if there's one thing about the company, so like if I'm interested in I&D, I'll look at their I&D initiatives and say, hey, I saw this on your website. Can you tell me a little bit more? Because I think when you're talking to 200 to 300 people a day, what stands out is that you researched and that I'm like, oh, I remember that person. They were really interested in this and they asked a really good question. So I would absolutely do your research and just make sure that you don't just ask a question to ask a question.
We have about 4 minutes left. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, Jessica asked, do you know of any rotational programs for alumni HR professionals who are not students or recent grads?
Correct me if I'm wrong at some other companies, but I think a requirement of rotational programs is to be in school.
Yeah, so I know personally a few people that have gotten into rotational programs that were not recent grads. Those, they probably will be few and far between, but I would just search rotational programs, see what the qualifications are, because even if it says recent grad, apply anyway. And in your cover letter, you can explain maybe why, you want to apply for this program even though you've been out of school for 2-3 years. I just had a friend that accepted a position who's been out of school for 6 years and did a rotational program. So you never know, I would apply anyway.
So we have about 2 minutes left. So I'm going to ask my panelists here, any final words of wisdom or advice you'd like to impart on our students and alumni tonight?
Become friends with your professors. They will help you. They can write references for you. Your professors can give you a lot of guidance. That's one of the best things I ever did for myself, was staying in contact with my professors. So they are nice people. You should get to know them.
Network. Utilize your network to advance your career goals. The end.
Yep, I would absolutely agree with both of those. Utilize your network. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that you don't know, because you just don't know where that next conversation could take you, and you don't want to discount yourself. So be confident, show up like you mean it, and just be yourself.
Thanks so much. And with that, I want to give a big thank you to our 3 panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us this evening and to share their advice and their wisdom with all of us. I also want to thank all our students and alumni who are attending tonight for, putting your career as a priority and wanting to learn more from people who have gone through this process before you. And of course, thank you to my colleagues for helping me put this panel together. I just want to do a final plug for our virtual career fair, which is happening tomorrow on Handshake from 10 to 3. I'm putting the link in the chat again in case anyone wants to sign up. You still have time before the session start tomorrow morning to sign up for that fair. And if you have any other questions or want to reach out to us for support, feel free to reach out to us and we are here to help you. So thanks again, everybody, and I hope you'll have a wonderful evening.
Hey, can I ask the three panelists to stay on for just 30 seconds? Like, let
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
students,
Can
let
I
everyone.
just quickly say